Everyone, in this video we're going to focus on power and conflict poetry, and we're going to look specifically at the poem Ozymandias. Ozymandias was written by Percy Bysshe Shelley. So Ozymandias was written in 1917 and it was based on the Egyptian pharaoh Ramesses II, also known as Ozymandias. The main message is that power never lasts and time and nature will always win. So it's based on a broken statue in the desert, symbolizing how even the greatest rulers are forgotten. The key ideas in this poem are that human power is temporary, as rulers think they are mighty, but time eventually erases them. It also demonstrates that power corrupts, because Ozymandias was arrogant, cruel, and self-obsessed. It shows how nature and time are the real power, as the desert has destroyed the statue. It also shows that art outlasts rulers, because the sculptor's work survives longer than the king's empire. Let's have a look at the structure of the poem. So, it was written as a sonnet, but it was not a perfect one, as it was a mix of Petrarchan and Shakespearean structure. This broken form can reflect the broken statue and the broken power. It is written in the rhyme of an iambic pentameter, but it is slightly irregular. This shows instability. This poem is also written in a framed narrative, as it is a story inside a story. So it is written from the speaker, who talks about a traveller who has seen the statue, and Shelley does this to distance himself from criticising the kings directly. So the context of the poem is that Shelley was a romantic poet, as he believed in the power of nature. He disliked monarchy, tyranny, and oppression, and Ozymandias symbolises any ruler who abuses power, not just a pharaoh. It's also a hidden criticism of King George III, who Shelley felt was war-obsessed and outdated. Let's have a look at the summary of meaning. So, Shelley shows that human power is fragile and temporary, whilst nature and time are vast, eternal forces that eventually destroy all pride and ego. If we have a look at the poem, you're more than welcome to pause this video now and have a little read of the poem before we move forward. We're going to do a line-by-line analysis now. So, these are the first two lines of the poem, and it says, I met a traveller from an antique land who said, 2 vast and trunkless legs of stone. Here, met a traveller shows the narrator is framing the story as being second-hand, and this creates an idea of a framed narrative, as it creates distance between poet and message, adding authority and mystery. The quote where it says, who said, shows that a drop dash straight after, known as caesura in poetry. This signals that what's going to follow is the traveller's report, and it is not the speaker's direct claim. 2 vast and trunkless legs of stone shows an image of a ruined state. The adjective vast suggests former greatness, whereas the adjective trunkless stresses incompleteness and decay. The alliteration of the letter T gives us a hard sound, emphasizing how large the statue used to be versus how insignificant it is now. Stand in the desert. Near them, on the sand, half sunk a shattered visage lies, whose frown and wrinkled lip and sneer of cold command. The quote, stand in the desert, shows emptiness is highlighted, as the statue is isolated in an empty environment, and desert and sand refer to time and erasing. The ellipses are shown that the setting is used as a symbol, and the ellipses creates a pause, showing a sense of space and silence. Half sunk shows us a gradual burial of the statue by time. Shattered visage demonstrates a loss of identity. Whose frown shows us that the artist gave personality to the statue's face. And the last quote here, wrinkled lip and sneer of cold command, shows that list of facial features showing contempt and authoritarian arrogance of the ruler is demonstrated on the statue. And the quote, cold command links cruelty and power to Ozymandias here. This is an example of synthetic listing and a negative semantic field. This also demonstrates an idea of imagery and decay and fragmentation. This quote says, tell that a sculptor well those passions read, which yet survive stamped on lifeless things. Pause the video now, have a go at analysing this quote yourself, and when you're ready, press play. So, this quote tells us, sculptor well those passions read, demonstrates that the sculptor captured the ruler's true passions, and the statue reveals character, and it's a metatextual idea showing that art actually reflects the truth of what this ruler used to be like. Which yet survive, stamped on those lifeless things, show us that although the ruler has gone, his passions survive in stone and they are frozen in time. This is an idea of a paradox and a metaphor. So it's a paradox because the passions survive on lifeless things, and it's a metaphor because the word stamped actually refers to the words being impressed into the stone, shown for the rest of eternity. The next quote says, "The hand that mocked them and the heart that fed," and on the pedestal these words appear. So, hand and heart present us with two images here. This refers to the hand of the sculptor, and the heart, which refers to the ruler's inner life that fed them. And this suggests an idea of complicity and ambiguity. This is an example of a synecdoche, ambiguity, and rhythmic balance here. And the quote, "These words appear," demonstrate a moment of revelation because the inscription is quoted next, building a sense of dramatic irony. Here we have the quote, "My name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair." Here, the top quote shows as a grandiose self-title being demonstrated, showing that the ruler felt proud and imperial, and the language technique here is hyperbole and boastful diction. The bottom quote, the words "look" and "despair" demonstrate an imperative, and it's challenging to the power rivals, showing Ozymandias was seen as being an arrogant ruler. The quote, "Yea mighty" is imperative and is direct addressed to the other rulers, setting up an example of dramatic irony. The next quote says, "Nothing beside remains. Round the decay of that colossal wreck, boundless and bare, the lone and level sands stretch far away." Here, the top line shows us a stark, blunt sentence, as it demonstrates the reality is contradicting the boast. The pedestal's claim is hollow, and it's a short sentence showing caesura for emphasis here. The colossal wreck quote shows this is the final image of the statue, as it is a colossal wreck in an empty, endless desert. And this is a metaphor, as it shows the wreck might be demonstrating the empire that the ruler actually ruled. The last quote, "lone and level sands," shows pathetic fallacy, as the land might reflect the loss of the ruler, and the alliteration is used to stress the monotony and finality of the actual statue. Let's have a look at doing a section by section analysis. So, lines 1 to 2 are the opening of the poem, as it demonstrates the frame and the distance. And what happens in this section is that the narrator introduces a traveller from an antique land, and he hands over the story to them. The effect of this is that Shelley distances himself from direct political attack by reporting somebody else's words, and this framed narrative makes the message feel like a discovered truth, and it also creates thematic authority, as the traveller's sighting is seen as being archaeological evidence. The main techniques in these lines are frame narrative, dash and caesura in poetry, and the irony also being potential. And this is because antique shows ancient and it shows past tense of the ruler, showing how arrogant he used to be when he was alive. Lines 3 to 8 demonstrate us with a visual description of the ruined statue. And what happens here is the traveller describes the ruined statue, having huge legs and a partially buried, shattered face, showing contempt. The sculptor's craftsmanship is also noted in these lines, and the meaning of this is that this section contrasts the former greatness, where it was vast, with the present ruin of the statue being trunkless, shattered, and half sunk. And the facial details of this statue, where it had a sneer of cold command, characterizes the ruler as being arrogant and cruel during his days. The sculptor's role suggests that art can reveal the truth about power, as it preserves personality even if the ruler's deeds vanish. And the main techniques in these lines are the striking visual imagery, listing of harsh features, and the paradox, as the passions survive on lifeless stones. It also demonstrates enjambment to mirror fragmentation of the ruler. Lines 9 to 11 shows the inscription, and the arrogance of the ruler is exposed. And what happens here is that the reader is shown the pedestal's inscription, and this says, "My name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look on my works and despair." And the effect of these lines is that this is the peak of the ruler's arrogance, and is a public boast that he expects others to be crushed by his achievements and to be looking upon him. This immediately invites a sense of dramatic irony because the reader already sees the ruined state of the statue. And the tone then shifts to mockery here, as the inscription declares immortality, but it actually demonstrates its opposite. And the main techniques in these lines are imperatives, apostrophes where he's addressing to the other mighty rulers, and it shows hyperbole, self-title, and dramatic irony. Lines 12 to 14 are the final image when it emphasizes a sense of emptiness and time. And what happens here is that the poem closes with a blunt statement of loss and an image of empty desert stretching away. The effect of these lines is that the final lines deliver the moral of the whole poem, that human power crumbles and is eaten by time and nature, and the short sentence, "nothing beside remains," is devastatingly final, as the desert metaphorically represents time and erasure, and the colossal wreck underlines the futility of pride overall. The main technique in these lines are the short declarative sentences, alliteration in lone and level, and the imagery of desolation and finality. If we have a look at the overall interpretation of the poem, it is that Shelley's Ozymandias warns us that worldly power and pride are temporary, as even the greatest rulers end as ruins swallowed by time. The poem here uses a framed narrative where its bitter irony and striking visual imagery of a broken statue in a boundless desert to expose the arrogance of authority. At the same time, it suggests that art, which is the sculptor's work, and the poem itself both outlast political power by preserving the truth. When we are writing about Ozymandias in our exam, we have to make sure we always link to power being temporary, pride leading to downfall, nature and time being stronger than humans, and irony exposing the ruler's foolishness. Let's have a look at what poems we can compare with Ozymandias from the rest of the anthology. So, we can compare Ozymandias with My Last Duchess. The similarities between both poems are the pride and abuse of power. In Ozymandias, we have the quote, cold command, and in My Last Duchess, we have the Duke's controlling behaviour. We can also compare it in terms of both rulers trying to control how they are remembered, and how art reveals both true rulers' true character. The differences between the poems are that Ozymandias' power is destroyed over time, whereas in My Last Duchess, the Duke's power is social, controlling, and ongoing. We can compare Ozymandias with London, and the similarities are that both poems criticise those in power, both show human systems as being corrupt, and both highlight suffering caused by powerful people. The differences are that Ozymandias criticises a single ruler, whereas London criticises an entire political system. We can compare Ozymandias with the Prelude, and similarities are that both of them emphasise the overwhelming power of nature, and both show the insignificance of humankind. Differences between the poems are that Ozymandias focuses on political and arrogant power, whereas the Prelude focuses on the speaker's personal fear. Let's have a look at some key quotes to revise for Ozymandias for our exams. The first quote is Sneer of Cold Command, demonstrating cruelty and arrogance. If you would like a deeper analysis, just scroll back and have a look at the deep analysis there. Next quote is Look on my work, sheer mighty and despair, and here we have a sense of irony and pride. Next one is Nothing Beside Remains, where it shows us the power disappears of the arrogant ruler. Colossal Wreck shows us a metaphor for failed human power, and Lone and Level Sand stretched far away shows us about the power of nature and time.